President Trump threatened this week to invoke the Insurrection Act against ICE protesters in Minneapolis. Tensions, they've been high there since the shooting death of Renee Good by an ICE agent more than a week ago. The Insurrection Act is rarely used, but joining us now to talk to us and explain what this all means is Dr. Melody Huckabee Rowlett, an American politics professor at the University of Oklahoma. And Dr. Rowlett, we want to welcome you in. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about this. In a Truth Social post, President Trump said he would institute the Insurrection Act to put an end to what's happening in Minnesota. In simple terms, what does invoking the Insurrection Act allow the president to do?
If the president invokes the Insurrection Act, then he can send the military or he can nationalize the National Guard to take over the control and the normal daily life of a city or of a state in terms of governance.
So talking on that a little bit more, does this allow federal troops to essentially perform law enforcement functions there?
Yes, that's exactly what it does. And so while it's not the same as martial law, right? And so therefore, there's still in place the legislature and the city government and things like that. It does take over all law enforcement actions.
Now, if this were to be invoked, how quickly could forces be mobilized?
Well, there are currently 3,000 ICE agents in Minneapolis, and there are only 600 police officers throughout the state. And so it could be immediate. There's no question that they already have the people there to do that. And then they just add the military to that. It could be immediate. So this question is, does the president have the authority to do it? Well, under Section 252 of U.S. Code 10, he does. But the Supreme Court has said in multiple cases that this is limited if he is making a decision that's not based on evidence of actual unlawfulness and rioting and lack of control by the local authorities, then that can be rescinded.
Yeah, and that was going to be one of my next questions there. What kind of authority he has, what kind of legal limits are attached to invoking the Insurrection Act. And you talked about the evidence here, riots, things like that. The last time the act was used was in 1992 in LA. Give us some context on that and some of the outcomes that we saw as we look back on history.
In 1992, the president was asked to send troops to LA due to the rioting. At that point, the rioting had caused dozens of deaths. More than 2,000 people were hospitalized with serious injuries. There were many more injured. There was extensive property damage. And so the local authorities said, we can't control this. We need help. And so at that time, the president used the Insurrection Act to aid. And that's under actually the Section 251, where the president is asked to do so by the legislature or by the governor.
Now, as this is something that continues to develop, what would you say is the most important thing that people need to know about the Insurrection Act? What do we need to be watching?
Well, I think the question is, what is rioting, right? And what is lack of control? If the local authorities are controlling what is happening, if there's not full-scale rioting that is causing loss of life, that is causing extensive property damage, then the Insurrection Act should not apply because there would not be evidence that it was needed at that time. If there is an intensification of violent action by the protesters in Minneapolis, this would be something that the president could use to say that the Insurrection Act is needed.
Okay, Dr. Rowlett, thank you so much for coming on with us this morning and breaking this all down for us, this developing situation. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.